2-minute time limit does apply. The timer will be used and a warning will sound at the 1.5-minute mark, and office chamber or the live stream is happening and does impact those listening at home. So I thank you in advance for that. I will now introduce the councillors in attendance tonight, and I'll start to my left. We have Councillor Matt Wood, Councillor Alicia Curry, Councillor Mary O'Kane, and Councillor Alison Champion. I will now introduce the councillors to my right. The Mayor, Councillor Elizabeth Neely, the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Peter Castaldo, Councillor Rick Garotti, Councillor Alida McKern, and Councillor Mark De Pasquale. This evening the councillors are joined by the executive team. So over to the right side we have Mark Giglio, Director of Corporate Services, and Darren Bennett, Director of Assets and City Services, and over to my left, Natasha Swan, Director of City Development, and Joseph Tobacco, Director of Community Wellbeing. The councillors are also joined by our support team from the governance and IT areas, and we thank you for participating in tonight's meeting. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, there are no apologies this evening and no leave of absence. Confirmation of the minutes from the ordinary council meeting held on the 3rd of March 2025. Can I please have a councillor to move and second? Moved, Councillor Garotti. Seconded, Councillor De Pasquale. I now put the motion. All those in favour? The motion is carried. As required at any other meeting of council, councils must declare a conflict of interest at the start of the meeting and leave the meeting when the item is presented to council. They will be required to leave and return when the item is being resolved. At any point through the meeting, if any other councillor recognises they have a general or material interest, they can flag that at that point and then follow the same procedure. Are there any disclosures of interest, councillors? No? No, there are no disclosures. Disclosures of interest for staff. Officers that are present, I now ask whether you have a conflict of interest in any items presented to council. To the CEO.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a conflict with confidential item 11.1, outcomes from the CEO Employment Matters Committee, held on the 19th of February 2025. So I'm declaring a conflict of interest and I won't be take part in those discussions tonight.
Thank you. So Alison will declare that material conflict of interest and not be present during the deliberations on that item. And the material conflict of interest is a direct conflict of interest where Alison Beckwith could stand to gain or suffer a loss depending on the outcome of the recommendations that we are at council tonight. The nature of the material interest relates to her employment and performance matters specifically, and due to the conflict she is not involved in the review of the report presented for decision this evening. Just before we move into the business of the meeting, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the recent Kosani fire tragedy in Macedonia that claimed 59 lives and left many others injured. Macedonia has declared a 7-day period of national mourning, and I send sympathy for the lives lost and extend support for the grieving Macedonian community within our municipality and beyond. Okay, just pausing for a moment there. It's not good to hear bad news and then move straight into business. There are no items of urgent business. There is one petition this evening. The petition is assistance with the reinstatement of the container deposit scheme at Cameron Parade, Milk Bar, Waxoni North. There are no speakers on this item. Are there any questions of officers, councillors, before we move the motion? No? There's an officer report before you in the papers. We have Councillor Garotti to move. Do I have a seconder?
Thank you, Mayor.
Oh, yep. Sorry, move.
To move with
yep.
an amendment, but at point 3, council write to the Honourable Colin Brooks, member for Bundoora, to raise the concerns of the community and seek a meeting to discuss their concerns.
Thank you,
So
Councillor.
moved.
Thank you, Councillor Grotti. The second to accept those changes. Councillor Grotti, do you wish to speak?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So, at the Cameron Parade Milk Bar, there was an over-the-counter collection service that was operated by the milk bar owner, and it was considered to be very successful. Unfortunately, arising from what I understand as little as just one complaint from the community, that triggered a process with council and Visy and state that ultimately resulted in the closure of that service. And there's been an overwhelming response from that community. I've probably received over 100 emails and phone calls, and there's this petition here as well. I'm sure the petitioner would like to be here to address the council, but she's a small business owner running a small business, and so is obviously there at the milk bar, but clearly looking for an opportunity to reinstate that over-the-counter service. Council is supportive and went through a process with the milk bar owner to get it to a position that would be appropriate for the community. And now, hopefully, with this petition, and if we can have a meeting with Colin Brooks, and we can apply some pressure to Visy and encourage them to revisit their decision. But it's a very valued service for the community and a form of ancillary income as well for a milk bar owner. And as we know, it's tough doing business out there at the moment, and this could be the sort of the tipping point as to whether or not that milk bar stays open long term, that ancillary income. Yeah, so very happy to be moving as I put forward. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Grotti. Does the seconder wish to speak? Councillor Champion.
Thanks, Mayor. Just very briefly, milk bar owners do a lot of long hours. It's a bit lonely. They do run the business themselves, so this was obviously an ancillary opportunity for them to create a little bit more income, an innovative opportunity, and happy to support this to be returned to the milk bar to support their business, which I understand is really appreciated there at Cameron Parade. It's very popular milk bar. So thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Does any other councillor wish to speak? Councillor McKern.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, I'd like to ask a question of the mover. Councillor Grotti, you mentioned that there was one complaint that caused the removal of this deposit scheme. Can you explain the nature of the complaint, please?
Was that a question more of an officer?
Yeah,
Okay. Can be referred.
Well, there was a complaint around noise, but there's probably some particulars around that complaint and the nature of the complaint that I'm happy to share with you privately, Councillor.
Thank you. It's always good to know what complaints are received. It doesn't necessarily mean that the complaints received outweigh the benefit of the function of the service that's being delivered. And certainly we do have in this council a towards zero waste strategy that we're working to, and container deposit schemes help achieve, in my opinion, that target. So I'll be supporting the receipt of this petition tonight, and interested to know the officers' report feedback. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McKern. Does any other councillor wish to speak? I put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Item 3.1, Council Plan 2021 to 25, 4-year highlights, action plan and progress reports. There are no speakers on this item. Before we move the motion, I'll ask councillors for questions before the discussion. I'm now calling for a motion. We'll have a mover. Moved. Councillor Wood, seconded Councillor O'Kane. Councillor Wood, do you wish to speak? Councillor O'Kane? Does any other councillor wish to speak? No? I'll speak then. This plan shows transparency, accountability and long-term development to meet the needs of our community and the future growth, and that we are sustainable as a council, which is very important. I think there's a lot to be celebrated. There's so much in there, it's hard to really pull out a few. I just went in order of the way the report was presented. Our First Nations Spirit Trail in Heidelberg West, very, very lovely. Our Youth Fest, celebrating older adults, our progress and our corporate emissions plan. There's been a number of community infrastructure projects completed. So, just to mention a few small ones, the public toilets in the cloud, the new boardwalk at Yarra Flats, the pavilion improvements at Greensborough War Memorial Park. So Council is also reviewing the 35 recommendations from the think tank, and this will be incorporated into the future plan with that very important community consultation. I put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. I'm getting there. Item 3.2, Cemeteries Trust Operational Report. There are no speakers on this item. Before we move the motion, are there any questions? No? Do I have a mover? Moved Councillor De Pasquale, seconded Councillor McKern. Councillor De Pasquale, do you wish to speak? Councillor McKern? Does any other councillor wish to speak? No? I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Item 3.3, Cemeteries Trust Financial Statement. There are no speakers. Are there any questions of officers? I'm now calling for a motion. Do I have a mover? Moved Councillor De Pasquale, seconded Councillor O'Kane. Councillor De Pasquale, do you wish to speak? Councillor O'Kane? No? Does any other councillor wish to speak? No? Okay. Sometimes we don't need to speak to every report. With this one, it's a good financial result due to, but maybe not for a good reason, due to increased burials and ashes, interments, and also the sale of the vault. So, instead of a $40,000 operational loss, it's $81. But yeah, it's I wasn't going to say, but yeah, not for the best reasons. Put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Item 3.4, adoption of Council's advisory committees. There are 7 speakers on this item. Okay, the first speaker is, I hope I pronounce this, Jean Mertens from the Banyule Bicycle Users Group. Sorry, pronunciation, if you could correct me on that. Will address council in person and is speaking against the recommendation. You just push the button. You have 2 minutes to speak. Which button?
I can't see.
Yep, that's it, you've done it.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak to Council. My name is Jean Mertens. I am speaking against the motion because of the absence of an active transport committee in the current plan. I am a bike rider and I use my bike for transport as well as for my health and well-being and maintaining social connections. I am a member of Banyule Bicycle Users Group on our committee and our Improving Connectivity subcommittee. I believe an active transport committee could assist Council to advocate, prioritise, plan and implement improved active transport in the city. Firstly, by obtaining the $2 million Safe Local Roads and Streets program offered to all Victorian councils and recently endorsed by Darebin Council, our neighbours. Secondly, I draw Council's attention to the Frankston City First campaign, seeking $11.7 million of federal funding towards a package of initiatives that strengthen connections within their city and to neighbouring municipalities, including walking and biking pathways that integrate key suburbs with their city centre. They have more of the cities. We're kind of a bit dispersed compared to Frankston, but finally, it is important that Council uses innovative strategies to plan for the increased population we can expect in our neighbourhoods before 2030. Residents are already coping with congestion on our roads and need alternative ways of moving safely from home to and between activity centres, schools, sporting and cultural facilities. I am convinced Council would gain significant benefit for our community from a committee focused on improving connectivity and active transport. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. Our next speaker is Michelle Jovis, who will address Council in person and is speaking against the recommendation. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you. For background, I have been on VCAC from 2018 through to September 2024, and it was a very worthwhile committee and functions well and has not really impacted by these changes. However, I have concerns about the proposal to reduce the number of population and advisory committees from 8 to 4. And my concern is that were the committees that have been disbanded, such as Inclusive Annual and Disability Inclusion Committee, and others, were they consulted about changes? As I've discussed this with members of some of these committees, and they tell me they were not. They are concerned that a number of issues may not have been responded to or considered. The new Large Connected Communities Committee will have insufficient time to look at agenda items in depth. Approximately 20 minutes each for social justice, age-friendly, disability, multicultural issues, and LGBTIQA+ issues every 3 months at a time of considerable community change and unrest. Pressures are just growing exponentially, yet we seem to be putting less time into discussing social cohesion issues that impact all of us. What time would this committee have to properly consider action plans, implementation updates, or subcommittee working group reports? There is only time for this to be a tip and flick review committee, which is a disservice to everyone. And there is also concern that in a large committee, that more strident, more passionate voices will drown out quieter members and dominate the agenda. And how will a committee that meets so infrequently, covering such a huge range of topics, be able to evaluate the success or not of the various council policies and action plans? And how is council going to be accountable for the implementation of the various connected communities action plans? And there are also concerns about the champions of working groups of up to 20 people, how to become a member, how this is advertised. Also concerning is why the previous Inclusive Annual Committee has been left out of the 4 champions groups. This is a committee that has dealt with justice and social issues and state government priorities, including access to housing, social policy, gambling, reducing harm from alcohol, smoking and vaping.
Thank you, Michelle. Good sum up.
So these are really significant community issues that council should be advocating for. And I'm just wondering if one of those committees is actually being replaced with something else, because perhaps that's the reason.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you, Michelle. Pippa Griffith will address council in person and is speaking against the recommendation. Thank you, Pippa.
I did have a question for the last speaker. No, that's okay. Sorry, Pippa. I just had a question for Michelle, if that's okay. Just listening. No, that's all right. Just listening. You mentioned consultation at the start of your 2 minutes. You mentioned consultation and that the committees felt that they hadn't been consulted with. I just wanted to maybe ask the appropriate director if A, it was required, and B, was any done? Was there any feedback at all from the last committees?
Thank you.
Through you, Mayor. Thank you for the question, Councillor Champion. At the end of the last term, officers prepared a report for Council which considered all of the feedback from the participants of our most recent committees. The feedback from those committee members was incorporated into the development of what's being considered this evening. So hopefully that answers your question. Does Council have an obligation or a legislative requirement to have committees? No, it doesn't, ordinarily. Nonetheless, I can confirm that the feedback from previous committees has been considered in this instance.
I just must have spoken to people that will available at that
Thank
time.
you. Thanks, Michelle. Griffith. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't believe this motion goes far enough. If advisory committees have been effective, why not expand the programme and take advantage of the lived experience and expert knowledge in the community for other things that Council's involved in? Why isn't there a committee in the health or built environment spaces, or one that works where the two issues intersect? How the local environment we live in affects our health. Very recent research shows how the built environment impacts population health. They use gestational diabetes, which leads to large babies, impacting the mother directly during delivery, and lifelong health impacts for the child. Pregnant women and new babies are very sensitive to the environment, and their health can change quite quickly. So it's a powerful way to assess that environment. It's not just mothers and babies. That's also a good indicator of the health of the rest of the population. Significant parts of Banyule are in the second and third quartiles, but the first quartile is the best. So that's something to be proud of and shows us we have a lot of work to do to improve things. There's potential for a committee or working party to capitalise on the experience residents have in their locality, to work on translating council policies into on-the-ground reality, creating a built environment that accommodates the increase in population and improves the environment for everyone in ways that enable people to improve or at least maintain their health and well-being. We owe it to our community to do everything we can to make our environments more livable. Instead of this, we're being offered emerging issues forums. The budget for these is significant. 2 forums will cost the equivalent of 4 committees with associated working groups for a year. Emerging issues such as housing and homelessness are important and urgent. I think a better way to deal with such issues could be through creating working groups that can be established quickly and meet regularly over, say, 3, 6 or 9 months. Working groups that can be pulled together quickly for specific purposes could be much more effective than large, expensive forums. Thank you.
Thank you, Pippa. Okay, moving on to our next speaker. Brian Grace from Good Governance Manual will address Council in person and is speaking against the recommendation. Thank you, Brian. You're there.
Thank you very much. My name is Brian Grace. I'm a resident of Greensborough and have been for 48 years. I'm also president of Good Governance Manual. Good Governance has looked at this, the ideas that Council has put forward, and we don't support it. We don't support it because committees are a connection to the community. The people sit on these committees and give a lot of time, a lot of effort, and it's free advice from experts in their field. And by abandoning the committees, what you're doing is you're saying to the community, well, we really don't want to hear what you need to say on these committees. And what you're really doing is putting up a wall. And I guess in the last elections to all the councillors that were elected, not one of you put on your pamphlets that you were going to get rid of committees. And it's an important issue Because had you said that, had you put it on that I'm going to vote against having community committees, how many votes would you have got? Well, I doubt you would have got any, you would have lost some, because people would have turned away. So you're making decisions about getting rid of committees that is not supported by the community. People want to be involved in their local community. They want to be involved with the council. But by getting rid of committees, you're really putting up walls that don't need to be there. And I'm prepared to take any questions.
Thank you, Brian.
Okay, thank you.
Is there a question? Yes, Councillor Castaldo, you have a question?
I've got a question for Mr. Walters. Did you... Brian Grace, sorry.
You can call me Mr. Walters.
Mr. Grace, Mr. Grace. Just quickly, did you look at the working groups that were related to the committees, and you don't believe that the working groups are...
they're not as effective or efficient as an out-and-out committee, because the committees talk directly to councillors who usually sit on these committees, but not the working groups, because there may not be councillors there, they don't have to be there.
Thank you. Any other questions?
But
No.
Mr. Walters.
No, thank you, Brian.
No, Brian Walters.
Okay, moving on. It's an eerie night tonight, it's the weather. A written statement will now be read on behalf of Janelle Ryan by Darren Bennett, Director of Assets and City Services. Janelle is speaking for the recommendation.
I've been a member of the Banyule Arts and Culture Advisory Committee since 2019. My membership has also extended to serving on sub-working groups responsible for providing policy development, advice and assessing applications for arts and cultural grants. I have a lifelong association with the arts, cultural development and creative industries as a performing artist, a tertiary qualified arts manager and working in paid and voluntary roles for arts, events and entertainment organisations, including the City of Melbourne and the Victorian Government. I believe BACAC plays an important role in keeping arts and cultural experiences relevant and meaningful in Banyule. This is because committee membership is comprised of many arts sector professionals whose collective strategic knowledge and sector expertise has assisted me in council developing and delivering a strong arts and culture offer. During my time on BACAC, I've seen this expertise utilised to make detailed recommendations on technical specifications for the art spaces at Ilch, ensuring a museum standard exhibition space and other professional presentation spaces. Assure that artworks acquired into the Banyule City collection is significant and collectible and meets the criteria of the collection policy. Develop a public art policy that articulates the value of public art and has contributed to more art around Banyule. Delivered a smart and flexible arts and cultural strategy that will embed cultural outcomes for the community into the future. I encourage Council to re-establish the Advisory Committee program, including the Arts and Cultural Committee, so that access to creative industries, knowledge and advice from members who also understand what it means to be part of the Banyule community remains strong.
Thank you. Any questions? Marcus Wiggum will now address Council in person. He's speaking for the recommendation. Thank you, Marcus. Would you turn on your microphone, please? Yep, it's on.
Is this on?
Yes.
Good. The points that I want to make are that I'm glad to see there's at least one committee remaining. Consequently, I am supporting that, but it is totally inadequate. The opportunity to have a genuine, continuing two-way engagement with the Council via the Advisory Committee processes are valued for several reasons, as advisory committees offer a valuable channel not easily duplicated by any other approaches. They build relationships between staff
and the presiding council member in a manner which, with genuine engagement, impossible in 2-minute presentations limited to agenda items. Community expertise is free and thus considerably cheaper than the usually comparable capability consultants for specialised areas could be secured for the Ratepayer Committee. We do have some experts in this community and they're very happy to help. But it does require more than the occasional pre-set and often third-party surveys to build the knowledge and the mutual credibility between council and the community. The temptation to do surveys and call it engagement does not permit the learning process needed for trust and credibility to be built. The think tank experience should have made that clear, but was, as far as my consultations have reached, not treated by the members as including a duty to bring in others, but otherwise a good example of the modern style of restricted population sampling practice. So thank you. The building of sustained bridges to community members on a continuing basis is one of the essential steps that I and my co-author identified and are critical, as absolutely critical in our recent book, examining on how to recover trust and mutual respect and mutual knowledge between the public service and the community. It's available from the Mandarin under the title of The Expertise Deficit. And I hope that some of it and some of the observations will be seen as constructive. I repeat, I support the presentation insofar as it keeps any committee, but I indicate that you are basically cutting off your nose to spite your face. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to the final speaker, a written statement will be read on behalf of Melissa Murphy-Webster by Natasha Swan, Director of City Development. Melissa is speaking for the recommendation.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. It's great to see an amalgamation of committees to focus on championing key topics. I'd love to know that there is a diversity of opinions within these groups, fostering robust discussions and the inclusion of new perspectives. I also understand there may be a fifth committee dedicated to sustainable outcomes, addressing concerns such as financial issues, population decline and other factors directly impacting individuals and families. I believe this would be a valuable addition to the effort.
Thank you. Councillors, before we move to the motion, are there any questions? There's an officer... Yes, sorry, I didn't see. Oh, question or moving? Okay. Councillor Grotti moved. Do I have a seconder? Oh. Moved with amendments?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So moving point number 1, just with the following changes. A, appoint a councillor as chairperson for each advisory committee, except in the case of the First Nations Committee, which shall have a co-chairing arrangement. Point number 2, as is, and just confirming that there will be a report back to council after the terms of reference are considered. We'll move on to point number 3. Endorses the establishment of the following committees in terms of reference for the period of June 2025 and September 2029. Environment and Climate Action Committee, Arts and Culture Advisory Committee, Connected Communities Advisory Committee and Sustainable Living Advisory Committee. Note that Council will receive a further report on the draft terms of reference, which will be refined with the newly recruited advisory committee members, along with any name changes for adoption. 5 and 6 as is. So moved, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Grotti. Do I have a seconder? Seconded, Councillor McKern. Councillor Grotti, do you wish to speak?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I'm happy to make a couple of brief comments. Look, we've certainly heard feedback from the community around, 4 not being enough, and particularly the need to have a committee that really engages the expertise that lies within our community, which has been the motivation for putting forward a Sustainable Living Advisory Committee. I think we had Marcus Wickham address the chamber, but I believe that it may be Professor Marcus Wickham, given your background, and that's just reflective of the calibre of individuals and expertise that we have in the community. In Professor Wigham's case in transport matters, but in many other cases it might be around housing, it may be around cost of living, it may be around planning and strategic planning. And so by structuring this in this way, we want to have a committee that can draw in that expertise, and as our speaker from Good Governance, Banyul, pointed out, to have that frank discussion and interaction with the elected representatives and that exchange of ideas, and to tap in to the free expertise that exists within the community. So I think by what we're putting forward, we're trying to streamline a little bit what was there previously, but also have sufficient breadth in terms of topic and in terms of focus area to properly engage with our community and to draw that expertise. And all I could say is that if this is accepted by the rest of the council, I would strongly encourage members of the community to put yourself forward for where you think you can have the biggest contribution. I suppose a few other things that I just wanted to point out is that we are going to have those terms of reference go to the committees that are selected, because we think it's important that the committees, and then by extension the community, own the work that it will be doing. Not council saying this is how it's going to be, but the committee being able to do that. And that's a leaf, to be honest, that we've taken out of the First Nations committee, around reflecting on the success of that and the strength of those committee members saying that they're empowered and that they're in control. And we're saying, hang on a tick, we should extend that to the rest of our community and give everyone, all the other committees, the opportunity for input. So I'm excited about what we're doing, and I'm really eager, hopefully, to move forward with this and to do some new and innovative things in Banyul. Thank you, Mayor.
Do you have a quick question?
Yeah, I have a question from a relevant officer. Traditionally, we've brought back committee members back to council for acceptance. In this case, the amendment suggests that they're established before they come back to council.
Director.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. Thanks for the question, Councillor Castaldo. It would be ordinary practice for the name of applicants to be put forward to council for consideration and adoption before those committees are operational.
And do you have another question?
I've got a question for the mover, whether they're willing to accept a change of name for Part 3C instead of Connected Communities, Diversity and Inclusive Advisory Committee.
Sorry, Councillor Gotti.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Happy to respond to that. Look, certainly take on board that request of Councillor Castaldo, and certainly one of the objects of that committee is to promote diversity and inclusion. But I really like the name that the officers have come up with. I think it has a power and a strength to it, and it's about connecting council and connecting our community. So I would be leaving it as is, but with the sincerest respect to Councillor Castaldo.
Thank you for the question. We have Councillor Curry with another question.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. Just as we're going through the process of adopting our committees this year, could the relevant officer answer the question, if we have a committee in place that we adopt tonight and it isn't a working committee, we just think that it needs change, what would be the first opportunity to rehash that? And also adding to that in reverse is what options do councillors have to add a committee where we see the need and it hasn't been adopted within this structure?
To the Director, Joseph Tobacco.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. Thank you for the question, Councillor Curry. To your last question, Council is empowered to consider establishing any form of committee or any tool that might be necessary to respond to a particular matter of issue at any point in time for its term, so it's not constrained just to this decision before Council this evening. There are many other tools also available to Council under the community engagement policy, and also the development of any policy or strategy might include input from councillors around the types of target audiences that may be sought to provide input to Council at that particular point in time. In terms of these proposed committees operating, there will be periodical reports which will be coming back to the Chamber, which will outline the minutes and the decisions or recommendations made by each of those committees. So that naturally in itself provides an opportunity for officers to both brief Council and to bring back any concerns or any issues that may be prosecuted by councillors in terms of the continuation of those committees or the augmentation or changes to those committees.
Thank you. Just before we move to the second, are there any more questions? Councillor McKern.
Thank you, Mayor. I think Councillor Garotti has actually spoken very well in support of the advisory committees, and I also think our speakers tonight, every one of you has actually presented a solid case as to not only why we should continue with our advisory committees, but as to why we need to expand them. And you've recognised the gaps in the model that's been included in the officer report, which essentially establishes a more of a truncated suite of advisory committees, and also looks to address planning matters in a series of emerging issues forums. While I think it's a good idea to have community forums in addition to advisory committees to discuss particular matters of current interest, I'm not convinced that they have the ability to deliver the tangible benefits and outcomes which advisory committees are empowered to do. We're looking at sustainable living as an additional advisory committee which would cover off on some of the subjects which were raised tonight, including housing, heritage, active transport, public realm, urban design, and others that fall within the planning remit. And why an advisory committee instead of an emerging forum? Greater ongoing attention and greater powers than a forum. The forums are proposed to be discussion events. They don't have the powers of delivering recommendations through to the council group for consideration and possible adoption. That is a very significant distinction. So for this reason tonight I will be supporting this motion. I think it's a very exciting innovation for this council and progressive, and gives our community, particularly those who come with specialist skills that we can benefit from, an opportunity to advance a range of planning issues. So looking forward to it, and hopefully councillor colleagues will support it too.
Thank you, Councillor McKern. Does any other councillor wish to speak? Councillor Champion.
Thanks, Mayor. Hearing all the words that have been written and spoken this evening, it is clear that this council does support committees. We do hear you. We know you are very highly qualified, you are expertise in your fields, and we do value that. And we want you to contribute constructively to our home. If we did not, there would be no item 3.4 on our agenda this evening. There would be no feedback from last committees that was very well considered by our officers. There would be no time invested by our officers in a modification of our committees. There would be no briefings to councillors on the work that was done to be able to create what is in front of us. And we certainly would not have invested significant amount of time, either today or in the last several weeks, on this item. So the fact that there's been a lot around item 3.4 before it's even come here tells me that we do value you and your expertise, and we do want you to contribute. So as Councillor Grotti has said, we're hoping that you who do want to be involved, become involved. We'd love to see your names on those lists. So I will be supporting this motion this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Champion. Councillor O'Kane.
Through you, Mayor. I'd just like to, I suppose, back what my fellow councillor Alison Champion has just said. We've spent an enormous amount of time talking and debating and trying to work out how we can be as inclusive of all these really central issues as we possibly can. And in saying that, we absolutely do take as central what our community members say. I just wanted to have mention a word or say a word in support of the Sustainable Living Advisory Committee, because I think it puts a lot of, it has the capacity to address a lot of issues, not just from a planning and design perspective, but also from a very human perspective, and it puts human, whether households or homelessness, at the centre of it, and it enables us to capture a lot of really vital, important issues that can't otherwise be discussed in any of the other committees. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Kane. Councillor Curry.
Thanks, Mayor. So I just want to start with what my expectations was when we started these the talks on committees. We've got 9 councillors, 3 new councillors on board. We all had ideas. We all wanted to support committees, and how that structure has come about and what we're seeing is the result of a lot of conversations, a lot of ideas. We are not going to come to a position where all of us agree on every single committee, and we would like to see more. We have opportunity to add more committees through the options that were presented by Mr. Tobacco. But what I wanted to see through the committees was voices that we don't normally hear. Daniel runs a lot of consultation, and we might debate whether we think that's good consultation or not. But the point of committees for me was getting on board those voices that will struggle to respond to normal channels of consultation. And so people with lived experience that offer us various views. And when we have those views competing in a room, I don't feel that we are hearing those voices of the vulnerable and the people potentially that need our assistance to get those voices across the table. And we might be talking about homelessness and topics of interest that Council have got as their priority. And having a committee such as Sustainable Living, we are diluting those voices. So I'm actually not supportive of an amalgamation of committees, and although I admire a lot of the ideas that have been put forward, and there is merit to a lot of those, for me, in my mind, I want to support those voices that we're not hearing. And if we're going to put this open for 20 places on a committee, then how many of those voices are actually going to be representative of those smaller number of voices? So I would have liked to see the committees retain as age-friendly. I would have liked to see a youth committee. These are people that are not turning up to council meetings. We hear from them less. I still would have liked to see a public health and wellbeing committee. I'm not really supportive, and even if this goes across the line, I will be invested into getting those voices across the table.
Okay, sum up, Council.
Thank you, sorry, Mayor. So I'm looking forward. I think that it is not required at this point, and I would like to see council rehash that number D, and we can offer those in future to bring further committees to the table. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Council. Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Mayor. Committees are a vital opportunity for council to listen, learn and lead. Those who engage with the committees, they're obviously proud, local, passionate and typically well informed. The contributions are valuable and should be recognised and respected. This is complicated because our shared commitment as a working group are committed to engaging with our residents. So rest assured the conversations that have led us to this point have been robust. The conversation was born from questions regarding the broad nature of the previous committees, in conjunction with Think Tank, Shaping Banyule and the overall effectiveness. The opportunity now is to strengthen our engagement with our community. We're not throwing it away. It's appropriate to challenge what has evolved to this point and strengthen what's worked well. So I've got a couple of points to make about what's been presented. Firstly, I think it's important as a first-time councillor to declare that I fully support the First Nations Committee and remain committed to its work going forward. On the environment and climate action, I'm currently undertaking the Leading Climate Emergency workshop with Councillor O'Kane and Councillor Curry. And it's a critical space. The Council's right to insist on a direct strategy to engage, address and combat climate change. Arts and culture, I acknowledge I have much to learn and looking forward to the committee teaching me that. Beyond these, I've been strongly advocating for two key issues. The first is the shared use of open space. We need to bring together all users of our parks, dog owners, sports groups, rec users and the like, to develop a more consistent and inclusive approach to managing these spaces across our city. The other is active transport, and I thank Mrs Mertens for her comments and the commitment wearing your bug riding jersey here tonight, and particularly the reference made to the LDA's other work. With a rapidly growing city, including an additional 1,800 houses per year until 2050, and the introduction of the North East Link, we have a unique opportunity this term to rethink mobility for the future of Banyule. I'll wrap up there, thanks. Public transport integration, including the pressing question of whether the suburban rail loop will extend to Banyule and what that looks like in a generation, is upon us now. These topics are integral to our city's livability, and I'm pleased to say that they do appear in the workings of the Sustainable Living Advisory Committee. That'll do for me. Thanks, mate.
Thank you, Councillor Wood. Councillor Casaldo.
Yeah, I'd like to acknowledge the tremendous amount of work and thought and effort from all the councillors that have gone into this process. I'm supportive of the 4 committees that were recommended by officers, and also for when required, special interest areas forums to occur as well. And I'm very supportive of the intention of a planning committee, which Councillor McKern has worked tirelessly on as well. But when all of the elements that are considered in the Sustainable Living Advisory Committee are included, to have such a range of subject matter tried to be represented by 20 people, I think is completely unworkable and won't go to achieving those very important planning conversations that need to be had. So I'm not very comfortable with Amendment Part D and 4, and I won't be able to support the recommendation before us this evening on those grounds, but have an alternative motion to move if this one doesn't pass. Another very important element, I always like to think we're moving forward, making a more inclusive, diverse and equitable community. And tonight we're taking some very important elements out of the names of very important community groups. That's diversity and inclusivity. Both of those were in the original name for the Connected Community Advisory Committee, but this version that's coming before us tonight, that's been taken out. I think we're at great risk to following down the path of America, Trump and Elon Musk, gutting out what is critically important to a functioning, inclusive, diverse and equitable community. So I'm not going to be comfortable recommending anything that takes those elements out and replaces it with a generic word that might bring upon a good collection of people that have nothing to do with those important areas. So I won't be able to support this, but very supportive of committees which are vital lifeblood of this council.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor De Pasquale.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, this is one of those items where 2 minutes just isn't enough, especially with our speakers this evening. I think back to when Councillor Garotti and I were elected onto this council, we only had one population committee, and that was BEAC. And since then, councillors made decisions, sometimes individual councillors made the decision to start up new committees. And it seemed to me like it just, someone made a decision and then we were deciding, okay, yes, let's add that committee, let's add that committee, let's add that committee. And we got to a point where we had so many committees and we were trying to gather the information in a concise way to use it correctly. An example of that is that those in the gallery may remember that through the last term, all the committee reports were brought up to council meetings all as a block. All the committees, all at the one item. So if a community member wanted to speak on 2 or 3 different recommendations, they only had 2 minutes. They're not going to, it wasn't enough. Likewise with councils, if we wanted to speak on 2 or 3 recommendations from different committees, we didn't have enough time to do that. So what happened is that officer impost and time and the amount of information coming in from these committees was too much to deal with it correctly. Now this is the first time we've reviewed the committee structure ever. So this is a time where we need to sit back, come up with these decisions, put them in action and then see whether they are serving us going forward. This is not a set forever and forget. It's never going to be that way because the information back from the committees is so valuable and it needs to continue to change and expand as we continue to go. So I'm happy to support this tonight in its current form, but I do know we are going to be having future conversations about whether what's working, what's not working and what needs to change. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor.
I just had a question for Councillor Peter.
Okay, I'll speak last, so go for your question.
Okay, I thought you might be polite and do that, yeah. I want to understand how Donald Trump's policies, values as the President of the United States impacts the Banyule Council in Victoria, in Australia.
There's a couple of key themes to the Trump presidency. One is to gut all the public service of diversity, equity, inclusion, taking the word out of all policy and organisations that support those things. They're withdrawing funding from them. We did not vote for a Trump agenda in this country, and therefore I will not be supporting the removal of important elements that flag to our community, the important diversity, inclusion and equity elements that are critical to our functioning community and the rationale for mine.
Thank you. I appreciate you explaining the council. Thank you.
I think every council has spoken, so I might add a few words. I know my microphone's a bit distorted, so I'll try not to. I naturally moved in towards it. A lot of what I was going to say tonight has been said predominantly actually by the 7 speakers rather than the councillors. I agree with what they've had to say. The committees are about informing, involving and engaging our community, and it is about specific input on projects, services and programs. The committees do build trust. I know one of the speakers mentioned that word tonight. They invite residents to participate, and under the proposed structure, it is a different structure. It is still inclusive. It is a new way of, and as Councillor Wood mentioned, we do have to build and change what we do and not keep things exactly the same. So I'd like there was some concern that things are being removed. There will be opportunities to fill in those gaps with the working parties. I like that the structure involves champion groups without that formal meeting process, and that does allow for more people to get involved without being inhibited by structured, continuous meetings that they must be at. You know, when you think of youth not coming to things, that does actually really support youth. I like that the committees give that opportunity for social connection as well as expertise and input. And I understand Councillor Castaldo's concerns about naming something more specifically to what it is very important, and that's okay. But I do think in terms of reference, opportunity may lead to a name change. So I'm happy to endorse this with the 5 committees, our First Nations committee, which is on the other page, and the additional one, and we will review and make sure that they're working well and as needed. I put the motion to a vote. For those in favour? Against? The motion is carried. Item 3.5, CEO Employment and Remuneration Policy Review. There are no speakers on this item, and councillors, are there any questions? Yep. No questions? Moved Councillor Grotti. Do I have a seconder? Seconded Councillor Champion. Councillor Grotti, do you wish to speak? Councillor Champion? Does any other councillor wish to speak? Councillor Wood?
Thank you, Mayor. I valued the conversation regarding the CEO employment and remuneration. It was appropriate and diligent reflection on the arrangement ensures good governance at the head of the organisation, which sets a standard and expectation through the entire organisation. I'm very satisfied with what I've read. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor De Pasquale?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And so, councillors, as a group, we helped. We did sit down on a couple of occasions and went through these policies, etc. We continually came up with that. We're very fortunate to have the CEO that we have, and the conversations were always very positive. And having been a councillor for some time now, I think it's, you know, we've been in quite a good position with regards to our CEOs. When you look at other councils who have difficulty just even communicating, the community really does suffer. So, so we are in a really good position. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor De Pasquale. Does any other councillor wish to speak? There have been minimal changes to the policy. The processes have been transparent and they're outlined in detail. For example, in preparing council's annual review of the CEO's performance, the committee is required to submit an annual review report to council as to whether the CEO, the extent of how the CEO's met their KPIs, or whether the criteria is varied under the performance plan, whether remuneration is varied, and any other particular items. So very well documented report. I put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Item 3.6, record of councillor meetings. There are no speakers on this item. Councillors, are there any questions of officers? I'm now calling for a motion. Do I have a mover? Councillor Champion, seconded Councillor Curry. Councillor Champion. There's nothing to speak. No to Councillor Curry. Any other councillor wish to speak? I put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Item 5.1, draft biodiversity strategy for public exhibition. There are no speakers on this item. Are there any questions? I'm now looking for a mover. Move Councillor McKern, Do I have a seconder? Seconded, Councillor O'Kane. Councillor McKern, do you wish to speak? Oh,
Thank you, Mayor.
do you have
I'll
any?
just go through the alternative.
Okay, I'll slow down. Please take us through the alternative.
Yes, Mayor, there are two alternatives. The first pertains to point 1, that Council endorsed the draft biodiversity strategy for the purposes of a 6-week public exhibition period from 1st of April 2025 to 19th of May 2025, including a community information session for the Banyule Friends of Groups involved in public land management, explaining the draft strategy and inviting feedback. And then the addition of point 3, that Council schedule a final meeting of the Biodiversity Working Group after feedback from the public exhibition period ending on the 19th of May 2025 at an appropriate time.
Thank you, Councillor McKern. Does the seconder second those changes? Yes. Councillor McKern, do you wish to speak?
Thank you, Mayor. Council's biodiversity strategy is a long-term plan. I believe it's 10 years to protect our natural systems, which of course includes our indigenous plants, animals, bushland reserves and waterways. Why do we have it? Well, firstly, we're obliged to have it under federal and state laws. And secondly, it's also an opportunity for us to show or to reflect the community's interest in our natural systems. We learn time and time again that one of the main reasons that people choose to live in Banyule is for its natural environment. The sad fact, however, is that biodiversity is in decline, not just in Banyule but across the world. In Victoria alone, we've lost about 80 species of plants and animals, and nearly 2,000 are at risk of extinction. And as I mentioned, given that there is such importance on the part of our community for protecting our biodiversity, I'm really excited that the working group, which helped put this together over the past year, has now come up with a draft biodiversity strategy for public exhibition. I wanted to acknowledge the participants in the working group. It was made up of local environmental advocates with considerable expertise in biodiversity and led by very competent staff at Banyule who have a real passion for protecting our environment. I was really lucky to be able to chair that group, and I wish to thank everyone involved for their input to date. We do have another meeting to round off the series of working group meetings, which is why I've included the alternative motion that the working group gets to see some of the feedback that our public will no doubt contribute. In particular, I wish to thank two officers, Paul Davies and Damien Harrison, who I believe in their acquittal of their position and duties go beyond what's required and bring true professional passion to this area of biodiversity. As a 10-year plan, it will be overseen by BCAC, the Banyule Environment and Climate Action Committee, and residents who are interested in involving themselves in the progress of implementing this strategy might consider putting up their hands for inclusion on this advisory committee when applications open this month. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor McKern. Does the seconder wish to speak? Does any other councillor wish? Councillor Castaldo.
I'd just like to acknowledge the work that's gone into producing this draft strategy. There's been a number of meetings and it feels like well over a year to me, I think. It's been going for quite a long time, and acknowledge the dedication that Councillor McKern has put into that process as well. They're a very dedicated group, and this is such an important element that contributes to our urban forest strategy, and the two of them both working together will be a really important part of us moving forward on some really important subject matter in Banyule. So I'm welcoming all the feedback that comes back over the next 6 weeks, And I think this will be a wonderful strategy once adopted, and we're always looking for improvements. So if you've got some ideas and comments that haven't been reflected in the draft strategy, please do submit those.
Thank you, Councillor Castaldo. Councillor Curry?
Thanks, Mayor. Just very quickly on the topic of biodiversity, I'm going to highlight one of the objectives, number 13, which is strengthening biodiversity considerations into future planning. And one of those actions is to continue to advocate for stronger biodiversity outcomes from the North East Link. And I'd like to highlight that actually we don't know what biodiversity is being lost by the North East Link. So when we do replacement planting, we're actually matching that biodiversity to where we're doing the planting. And we need to be advocating to North East Link to be much stronger on their report and coming back to us and identify what has been lost through their process. And I don't think they're being clear with this, and I don't really hold out much hope that we're going to get more clarity, but it is one of the areas that we need to work harder, because it has one of the greatest impacts on Banyule in the last couple of years and the next couple of years to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Does any other councillor wish to speak? I put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Item 6.1, Victorian Government changes to planning. There are two speakers on this item. Wendy Palliser, who will address Council in person and is speaking against the recommendation. Wendy is making her way to the lectern. Thank you, Wendy.
Good evening all, friends. I refer to a petition that has been forwarded to the Minister, Sonia Kilkenny, opposing the high-rises in Precinct 6 Heidelberg Heights, 37 homes bordered by Alfred, Edward, Montgomery and Francis Street, two small blocks separated by the laneway to Bell Street. We did the petition because we knew Council would not comply with planning panel recommendation to obtain the views of residents in this area. The 34 residing homeowners in the area and 3 renters stand united in the petition against non-compliance of high-rise rezoning proposals that also does not meet the required guidelines for a major activity centre. The rezoning is not only incompatible with the established neighbourhood character, and we hope the Minister sees clarity and right-mindedness, and any change would set a concerning precedent and result in huge negative impact to the community. Should be GRZ5. What's happened in Heidelberg, you walk out on a balcony and you see 6 high-rise buildings looking at you. This should not happen in Heidelberg Heights, a neighbourhood character area. It should be protected. Heidelberg's open space is being touted as the cemetery, Heidelberg Cemetery. Go and walk your dog there, have lunch. Heidelberg Heights has James Park Reserve, less than 300 metres from Heidelberg Cemetery and Bell Street. That's your park. It would serve Heidelberg, the Hilltop, Heidelberg, Ivanhoe and Heidelberg Heights. It's clear when Council has an agenda they are selective in gathering of data and clearly will ignore and sidestep community views as they have done in this case. I believe the core of Council or councillors of many years who influence can be seen in this Council has lost their way to right-mindedness for the sake of development, stomping on neighbourhood character. There is plenty of underdeveloped areas 12 kilometres from the city that people move out to start families, and they'll have a car.
Please
we need
sum up,
to have a
Wendy.
clear vision for development that will not undermine neighbourhood character
Wendy,
of our
sum up,
city
please.
that people know.
Thank you. Councillor Champion?
I just have a question with the speaker there.
The Speaker and Officer. Okay.
Speaker?
Yeah, I have a question for you. I hear you.
Yes.
Have you written to your local members at Anthony Carbine's? Yes. Have you written to Yellowbrook Anthony Carbine's?
Kate Elspeth has recommended that she will refer him to.
Excellent. Okay. So federal member has federal. Yeah, federal. Fantastic. Great. Right.
We'll see what happens.
Yeah. So I will speak to this item. We hear you.
Yeah. I'd like to meet with the councillors.
Our next speaker is Pippa Griffin, who will address council in person. Thank you, Pippa.
Thank you, and I'm speaking for this. I'm supporting this recommendation because I'm very glad to see it includes keeping the community informed of the planning reforms through the website. I think Daniel should have been doing this a while ago. Things are changing so rapidly in this space, and it's important that everyone has an opportunity to understand what has changed and the impact on Daniel, and also to understand how council is responding to those changes and impacts. So many of these changes are happening without proper consultation. I applaud the second part of the motion. Proper, meaningful consultation leads to better outcomes for everyone involved. Without it, there's a real danger of significant unintended consequences. However, is point 2A necessary? Do we need further reforms in Banyule when we can already accommodate the required increases thanks to the housing and neighbourhood character strategies we worked so hard on recently? What would further reform actually mean? Any problem is in the delivery, not in the approval of housing. It's right to express concern at the loss of decision-making power, not just for the Heidelberg Activity Centre, which again took significant resourcing and investment from council and the community, but in other areas too. Now to trees, canopy cover, which we see decreasing each year, and our urban forest strategy, one of those other things we took time and effort over recently. Has the government really considered how the changes they're making will impact the ability to achieve 30% canopy cover? It's their target too, and improve livability. Looking at the changed Clause 55 standards, front setbacks are reduced from 9 to 6 metres. Only 10% of the site needs to have canopy cover. Both of these things will make planting large trees less likely, which then means less canopy in the public realm, increased heat island effect, negative impacts on neighbourhood character, and make achieving 30% canopy cover so much more difficult. Because I look forward to the report and the draft submissions on the infrastructure strategy at the next meeting of this council. Thank you.
Thank you, Pippa. Are there any questions to officers? There's an officer report before you, councillors. Do I have a mover? Move. Yep, move Councillor Curry with some additions. Please take us through.
Thanks, Mayor. So I'm just going to start these amendments from point 2A. So recognition for the need and a removal of part of that clause, and then the addition of 4 significant housing increases. B, concern at the speed of the rollout that is at odds with enabling informed feedback from Council about the impacts of these reforms. C, concern at the loss of decision-making power, including the Heidelberg Activity Centre. D, concern that the reforms are not responsive to the shared goal of retaining and promoting 30% tree canopy across Banyule. I think I can see anything. I know we're still going right, page 2. Okay, down to 4. Note that the Council will receive a report and draft submission to the draft infrastructure strategy for Victoria at its meeting of 14th of April 2025, and that consultation remains open for the community until the 28th of April 25, which is at the Engage Victoria website for the infrastructure strategy, which is included. And down to number 6, note that a report will be brought back to Council which outlines an engagement plan to assist the community in understanding the various changes being implemented as part of the Victorian Government planning reforms. Thanks.
Moved Councillor Curry. Do I have a seconder? Seconded Councillor Castaldo. Councillor Curry.
Thanks, Mayor, and thanks to the Speaker. I take thank you so much for sending the emails. We've taken note of some of those changes requested. I think this area is such a changeable place at the moment. The state government is rolling out a number of reforms. I don't think our officers have had a chance to get their head around all of them, and the impact to residents is somewhat known but not fully known. But when state government is rolling out these changes, and they are rolling out housing changes without the other considerations in relation to infrastructure and tree canopy, biodiversity, and setbacks, I think, was another thing that I was concerned about, and the availability, the impact on our public realm, which is all important. I feel that we need to be pushing back on some of this. We need to be pushing back on state government. We want to push for our retained rights as councillors, primary decision makers in the planning space, and we want to ensure that our residents have input into the process of the changes coming, and also be informed of the on-the-ground impact that those changes have once they're rolled out. So we did have a number of motions that were discussed earlier. We've actually come back to this motion that's on the table. We will look at ways of delivering a message out to our residents. I'm looking at a couple of options which will probably come back when the report comes back to council. And just to keep in mind that the Engage Victoria site and the infrastructure strategy, council has no additional option to input but for the portal which is provided here. We're not getting any direct consultation with this, but I do encourage the residents to also have a look at this strategy and also do some input into the state government. It's really important that we keep our infrastructure moving along with our housing strategies. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Curry. Councillor Castaldo.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Curry, and to Pippa Griffiths that sends us lengthy emails prior to meetings. I'm planning regularly, and it's very valuable feedback. Now, this is a dangerous environment, I think, we as residents find ourselves in with rushed planning reforms that really do away with the many years of local construction of planning policy to reflect the variation and changes right across our municipality. We've just finished the Heidelberg Structure Plan. We've just gone out to our community and said, this is what we're seeking to do. We've got there, we've worked hard to reflect all of the things that they said. And we've adopted the planning panel's recommendations. We've done everything we could possibly do to try and meet the objectives of all stakeholders and all governing levels. But there seems to be this tremendous rush to roll out the big Melbourne agenda, the 10 million population by 2051. And then what does that mean? Does that mean we do away with all the tremendous work we've done on neighbourhood character and all the elements that we love about Melbourne? It's very concerning that the underpinnings and the reason why we're rushing this forward. So I think this is a good motion coming before us tonight, and the amendments by Councillor Curry as well are all very useful. So it is worrying. We don't know what to expect, and we want to make our community comfortable with the work that we do. And if it's just thrown out by a state government position at any point, where does that leave our residents? And I think we've got to back to them as hard as we can on this subject matter, and I'll continue to do that all the way through.
Thank you, Councillor. Does any other councillor wish to speak? Councillor O'Kane.
Through you, Mayor. I also appreciate the work that Councillor Curry is doing in this space and how this...
Some residents and developers in very difficult situations where they don't know what's going to happen in the future, and are we going to be stuck with developments that are going to stay halfway or just be out of place with what can come in the future. So I really support Councillor Curry and all the work she's doing in this area. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Kane. Does any other Councillor Champion?
Thanks, Mayor. As promised, I am speaking to this item. I have said it before, I'm going to say it now, and I'm sure I'll be saying it again in the future. This state government is removing any planning power decision-making opportunities for every single council in Victoria. It's not just Banyule. This is another one. Wendy, this is why I'm asking you to write to Anthony Carbines, because he's the state representative. He's in a position of this. He is responsible. So everything that has been said this evening by my fellow councillors so far, I concur with. I won't reiterate. I do appreciate that we still need to continue to support our home, our community, how our areas look, our activity centres, our neighbourhood zones look, and our neighbourhood character is significant. However, it's one of those things that the state government has no interest in. I do hear some speakers this evening, I do hear that there will be some applications to our committees already. I can hear it. You all want to, those of you who are interested in planning will want to contribute. But please understand this. We are doing the best we can to support our work for you and us. It is a very hard, it's a big challenge. It's a big challenge, and all of us need to go to that link and provide our feedback, and we are all on the same page. All right, we're all using that link to go to Victoria 30-year infrastructure strategy and provide our feedback. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Champion. Does any other councillor wish to speak? No? I might say, make a quick couple of points. I do agree with the vision, as in housing for all Victorians, accessible jobs, thriving places, sustainable environments and caring for country. As we all know, by 2051, this means an additional 45,000 homes. I, like my fellow councillors, would also like to know the implications for Banyule in terms of infrastructure, roads, footpaths, accessibility, access to public transport. Do I have a mover? Do I have a mover with an amendment? Do I have a mover? Move, Councillor O'Kane. Would you like to take us through?
Through you, Mayor, I'll just start with point 3, the amendment. I propose that we write to the Honourable Anthony Carbines, member for Ivanhoe, and the Honourable Colin Brooks, member for Bundoora, expressing our disappointment that the increase in affordable housing resolved by council was not supported in the approval for this development.
Thank you, Councillor. Do I have a seconder? Seconded, Councillor Garotti. Councillor O'Kane, do you wish to speak?
Our need for social and affordable housing and this...
of the community. And if I'm not mistaken, that member of the community had a disability, and it took her a lot of courage and bravery to address the council, and she called